afternoon. I'd encourage my colleagues who are on the Energy and the Environment Committee to make their way to room 1010. We are going to begin. We do not have a quorum, but we will begin so as not to, so that we're mindful of people's times. We're going to continue item number 4 at the request of Councilmember Huizar. And I'd like to, Mr. Prieto, take the sewer charge item number 3 out of order, since I think we've got somebody here who wants to make the appeal in person.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Item number 3 relates to sewer service charge appeal for property located at 10573 LeConte Avenue, City of Los Angeles. We have staff from the Bureau of Sanitation and City Attorney's Office. And the appellant as well. Very good. We'll hear from staff and then we'll take the appellant. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Council Member. Lisa Mowry, LA Sanitation. Mr. Estigar purchased the property at 10573 LeConte Avenue in August of 2002 and installed a second water meter for the purposes of irrigation. Unfortunately, he did not follow the procedure that's in place to install this as an official private water submeter, which would have ensured that the meter would not have had sewer service charges associated with it. Because that process wasn't followed, when Water and Power established the account to go with the meter, it was set up as a regular water account that did have sewer service charge on it, the same as the first meter that was on the property. In May of 2013, Mr. Estigar applied for an adjustment for a sewer service charge for the reason of irrigation. Sanitation investigated and concurred that the meter did only serve irrigation water. So that meter was adjusted to a 0% sewer service charge, while the first meter, which only served the home, was adjusted to a 100% sewer service charge. These adjustments were retroactive for 30 days in accordance with the Los Angeles Municipal Code. Mr. Estigar appealed the decision to the Board of Public Works and was granted an adjustment for an additional 11-month period, so a 1-year period total was adjusted. This is in accordance with the City Charter Section 350, as well as the California Government Code 911.2, both of which require that a claim be filed within 1 year of the cause of action. Therefore, Sanitation recommends not granting Mr. Estigar's request for the additional period of August 2002 through April of 2012, because the 1-year refund that's already been granted does comply with both the City Charter and the California Government Code.
Very good. And Mr. Labange is on his way. Mr. Estigar, would you like to come up and tell us about your appeal? Come on up, please.
Thank you.
You skipped right to 3. You didn't do 1, 2.
Thank you very much.
Please have a seat. Got it.
My name is John Estigar. I am the owner of property located 10573 LeConte Avenue. In 2002, I bought this property, and I understood that this is a big property and big sidewalk, about 3,000 square feet sidewalk for grasses and other things. And I understood that the charge of the water will be extremely high. I referred to Department of the Water and City, and I said that what I can do. They recommended that buy another meter, the second meter, only for purpose of irrigation, the landscaping area. I paid big amount of the money for the buying the meter in 2002, only for the irrigation, landscaping, and sidewalk, and another meter for my home. Sometimes I understood that I am paying a big amount of the money. I talked with several people. They find it out that they are charging me for the second meter that was solely for irrigation of the landscaping area. They are charging me also the sewer charge. Big amount of the money from 2002 to 2012. I referred to the city. They came over there and they determined that I have 2 different meters, one for my residence, another only for the landscaping area. I requested for refund all my money that they did by mistake or by negligence, extra charge. And it is over 1 year that I am wasting my time in several different departments and sending the letter, taking part in the different department. You charge me extra, you must return my money plus the interest. No, they said that the council will decide it. I am asking the council that refund all my money back from 2002, because if I owe the city 1 cent, they charge me extra. They charge me the interest. They charge me the penalty. I added the code of the IRS for late payment and the penalty. And I am requesting the council return it back all my money. This is my request.
Very good. Thank you so much for your testimony. Sanitation, so just so I'm clear, thank you very much. You may sit down now. Thank you. In terms of, so the Public Works Commission went ahead and approved 1 month of retroactive, and then the department did the 1 month, and then Public Works issued the entire year.
That's correct.
And that's a pattern in practice that we've had on these types of issues.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Well, the recommendation will be to deny the appeal. As soon as we get a quorum, we'll go ahead and vote on that, and let's hold the item on the desk. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
What's the scale? How much money are we talking about anyway? Just
It's a little under $3,900
for the
for the 10 years.
How much?
A little under $3,900.
Very good, thank you. Okay, so we'll hold that item on the desk. We'll go to item number 1 now.
Sure. Item number 1, motion Bonin Fuentes Bloomfield relative to request of the Department of Water and Power to report on the feasibility implementing policy recommendations initially proposed in the UCLA report, residential water consumption in Los Angeles. What are the drivers and are the conservation measures working? Sorry. We have staff from the Department of Water and Power.
Very good. Good afternoon. I don't know if you all had a chance to sort of talk about how you would want to present, but I wanted to thank Ms. Pinsel for being here today. It's Ms. Pinsel, isn't it?
Dr. Pinsel.
Dr. Pinsel, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here today. And I know that our colleague Mike Bonin was unable to be here for this presentation, but I want to thank him for bringing the information forward and helping us craft the motion that we did. I can't imagine a time that is more important for us to begin to, well, I shouldn't say begin, the department's been doing this, for us to continue the conversation on how we can appropriately begin to inform our residents and our ratepayers in a way that hopefully makes it so that we continue conservation and some better practices in the city of Los Angeles, understanding that we are probably not out of the woods, nor should we think that we're going to be as it relates to the drought, given sort of where we are. It's an arid climate. We have to do more to sort of change our behavior, and I think this motion and certainly Dr. Pinsel's expertise here will help us do that. So welcome, and if it's okay with the department, I'd like for Dr. Pinsel to begin the presentation, if that's how you all...
Yep.
Okay, very good. Let's proceed.
Thank you very much for having us. We're so thrilled to be here. We've been working on this project since since about 2010, I guess. And so we are very happy to be able to present the results of our NSF grant looking at indoor and outdoor water use in Los Angeles, and we did not suspect at the time how timely this would be. I also want to recognize the extraordinary assistance that we have gotten from Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, that they were willing to share residential billing data. In fact, all of the billing data of Los Angeles under a non-disclosure agreement over 10 years. We hope to be able to continue this work and figure out what's worked and what hasn't worked since the conclusion of this study, and in other sectors as well, like commercial, industrial, and multiple families. So I just want to say LADWP has been fabulous in helping us do this. So that's important when LADWP doesn't get a lot of credit for a lot of the hard work it does. So, we were curious to understand actually what were the drivers of indoor and outdoor water use in the single-family zone, and to really dig into some of the analysis that's been done previously in the models trying to separate indoor and outdoor water use, there are a number of different models, and we developed one as well that will show you that we think is closest to really describing the patterns of water use in Los Angeles. So we did three things. The analysis of trends and determinants in single-family residential water use, the evaluation of outdoor water use and landscaping irrigation models, which I won't tell you too much about because that is actually quite technical and not my expertise. And then finally, I think, and most importantly for this committee, the evaluation of the effectiveness of water restriction policies on single-family water use in LA. And I actually think there's a lot of good news here. So the drivers of single-family water use are really income, and I'll show you very graphically what that means. Landscape greenness, of course, is important. You know, the more water you put on the outside landscaping, the greener it is. But you can oversaturate the greenness as well. Water rates were important, and volume allocation. We found that there's a very wide range of single-family water consumption, as you can see on this slide. It is quite significant, and I think that tells us a lot about room for change there. And then we did 3 geographical clusters because we thought that these were representative areas: the valley, coastal areas, and downtown. So you can see here the average use of water per census tract. And I think that what is most significant here is some of the obvious things. Lower income neighborhoods use a lot less water. They have less big properties, of course, as well. But I think it also shows a whole room for different kinds of thinking about where policies and programs ought to change. So those are the 3 areas that we selected for intensive look. Examination, you can see if you look at the income map of the census, what the match is, and it's actually quite stunning. We've done the same thing, by the way, for electricity use, and so that might be another presentation for you at some other time. So income is the primary driver. Wealthier neighborhoods consume 3 times the amount of water than less affluent neighborhoods. What was interesting is Playa Vista and Venice are exceptions. As if you've been to Playa Vista, it's kind of obvious why. It's multiple family, it's very dense. Denser neighborhoods use less outdoor water use for good reason. But that income and household characteristics are tightly connected. So lot size is a big issue, right? Wealthier neighborhoods have much bigger lots, gardens, and so on. And a $1,000 increase in median household income increases single-family water use by about 2%. So some of the interesting questions, I think, that need to be asked that are difficult questions is, just because you have a larger lot, does that mean you ought to be able to use that much more water than somebody who does not? In the longer term, if you have not very much water to spread around, I think those are difficult policy issues, but should be asked. Yes, sir.
Just, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if this is covered. Who uses more water, UCLA or USC?
So here's the thing. Neither one of them, anyway, I won't get into that one. Perhaps my colleagues would venture.
I'm not going to touch it.
I worked at both places, so I feel like I have affinities for both. We do different things different ways. But so what we were able to show is that 10% of customers consume 30% of the total single-family water use.
So underscore that for us. 10% of the utilities customers consume single-family use 30% of the total single-family residential use in the city.
Yes.
Wow. Is there have you all sort of contrasted with other cities, understanding that Los Angeles is sort of very unique because of the size of properties, but are the ratios sort of similar in other areas? Are we more of a consumer or less?
Well, I think it really depends on the climate zone, too, because we need to irrigate to maintain the landscapes that we have. The other thing I would say is that we were able to do this work by virtue of having address-level billing data that we aggregated up, as you saw, so that the customer privacy is protected. And so LA is really at the forefront of being able to really understand its outdoor water use in a geographically specific and meticulous manner so that we can address the issue at hand without making broad policy decisions that may or may not be appropriate for the audience that it's applied to.
It's a clarification question on you're talking about water on a per person basis. Did you also compare and contrast the sort of communities in terms of geography? Does a geographic area in a wealthier community use more water than the equal amount of square footage in a lower income?
Let me get to that.
Okay.
So what you're asking is if we normalized by per capita, right?
Right.
And so what we found is that, and I'll show you in just a moment, you probably know the rate and household allocation influence. You probably know all this stuff about how the billing is done. So I'll skip this slide and get more into the questions that you're asking about Tier 1 and Tier 2 users. So what we found is that when the water rates are increased in Tier 1, which is the lower water use, there's greater response to price changes in Tier 1 users than there is in Tier 2 users because Tier 2 users tend to be more affluent. So if you have less money and your rates go up, you reduce your water consumption to reduce your bill. You have more elasticity, I guess. Less elasticity because you have a smaller budget. So actually per person, you use less water per person in lower income areas. So what we found was that if the goal is to create more savings with higher rates, actually Tier 1 users are the ones who respond more directly to higher prices, whether volumetric or the tier itself. So when the water volume allocation is increased, obviously, people feel like they can use more water. So there's a relationship between those factors that I think allows us to really develop policies to try to reduce water use, particularly out of doors. And I think that we gave you packets with peer-reviewed papers in them if you're interested in the actual specific details and the methods and the models that we used. But I'm just trying to give you what the basic take-home message is, that lower-income users are more sensitive to increases in water allocation, volume allocation, and neither price nor volume are sufficiently targeting the higher water users to really get them to reduce their water. However, and here's the greenness index over time, which is not scarcely surprising. People who use more water have greener landscapes. So what we found was that outdoor water use accounts for 54% of overall single-family water consumption. Now that's really good news because if indeed we go into a couple more years of drought, it means that we still have a lot of water for us to use indoors. It does mean that 54% of the water used out of doors may be luxurious if there is no water. What's also very interesting is the difference between the voluntary and the mandatory water restrictions. Mandatory water restrictions work much, much better. And so we're in this new phase of putting in mandatory water restrictions again, and I think we will find the data will show that water use will decrease because people know they have a firm idea of what to do and what not to do. People respond to that kind of information. If it's voluntary, you don't exactly know, well, should I do this or should I do that? But if you say, these days, this amount of time, on this side of the street, people have guidelines. And that's extraordinarily helpful for people to actually be able to do the right thing. I think you would agree with that, right? So the 2009 mandatory water restrictions worked very well. Thank you to Kristen for this wonderful infographic, by the way. And that's overall of the city. So we would say that the stringent mandatory restrictions of June 2009 led to even more, because in June it was more stringent, 35% reduction in outdoor irrigation use. Single-family residential households over water. If you looked at the density of greenness of those maps, you'll realize that even at that time, the density of greenness, which we measured using satellite imagery and normalized different vegetation index, showed that the density of greenness doesn't vary that much because I'm sure all of you have this experience of walking across saturated lawns and saying, "You're watering again?" Anyway. So, and we overwater, especially when the restrictions are not in place. So the findings, we found 2009 reductions over all neighborhoods, 17% in Pacific Palisades, 11% for Florence, but they use less water to begin with and they have less room to save. 2007 and 2008 restrictions, lower income groups conserve more than higher income groups when the water prices were increased. And mandatory restrictions are more effective at targeting higher income users. So you will not be too surprised at our policy recommendations, and that would be that other cities have more tiers. Salt Lake City has 5 tiers. Trabuco Canyon Lake has 8 tiers. I don't think we have to go to quite that extent, but we really do think that we can establish water budgets that are a little bit more stringent than what we have had today, and we can increase the tiers quite significantly and really make a big, big difference. Now, water budgets have been talked about quite a lot as the way to go. Well, water budgets, in a sense, LA already has water budgets. The thing about the water budget is it all depends how much water you allocate to people within that water budget. It's not a panacea. It really depends. If you have a high water budget for people, then they'll use more water. If you have a lower budget, then they'll use less water. So that's a issue that has to be really thought through very carefully, but we know that they can work very well. 50 gallons per person per day in Irvine Ranch, up to 68 in Santa Monica. And then you can add water use for outdoor irrigation on top of that, depending on how they can be very complex or they can be pretty simple. So we also recommend, and it's interesting that we had this presentation just before us, that it would be useful to be able to differentiate between indoor and outdoor water use, and that with a little bit more revenue that LADWP desperately needs, one could imagine over a 20-year period a transformation of the water billing system so that you separate indoor and outdoor water use. People just don't. How would you know how much water you're using out of doors versus indoors? You have a one bill. And so I think that giving people that kind of information, just like the drought restrictions, helps people manage their behavior better. And you could also price the water differently to reflect scarcity. We are going to have recurring droughts. There's no question about it. We would like a landscape change over time. I think that policy or that program, that infrastructure, jobs creation infrastructure, would also help move us forward to be able to respond. So the other part of it is increasing landscape options. I know LADWP has a very aggressive turf replacement program. I have to say that another aspect of that I think we need to show leadership on is really working with the wholesale nursery industry and the retail nursery industry to create the kind of depth of ability of people to really do the right thing. And I'm going to stop with one anecdote and I'm done. So many people have heard this anecdote, they're probably going to throw rocks at me or something. But I live right off of La Brea, and there's a new Orchard Supply there. Gorgeous, gigantic store.
4th and La Brea.
Right. Big drip irrigation, and let us help you with your landscapes, all this stuff, right? I go to the small nursery section. There's a table in the middle that says California Drought Tolerant Plants. Since I know a little bit about plants, I looked at this table and I thought, that's interesting. So I went and talked to the nursery guy, and I said, well, show me a California native plant. Not a one. And he said, oh, well, what about those succulents? They're California natives. I said, yeah, well, they're native to Australia, but they're not native to California. So nothing against those succulents. But the fact of the matter is, it just is an example of the need for a larger set of infrastructures of knowledge and practices to really move us to a more climate-friendly environment. So I will stop there and thank you very, very much for your attention.
Very good. Thank you. DWP.
Yeah, Jim Mcdaniel, Senior Assistant General Manager for the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power's water system. And we would also like to thank UCLA and Dr. Pincel for this work. We've been partnering with UCLA since 2010 to help analyze the effects of our various water conservation programs, and we've, as Dr. Pincel said, we provided data, which was a little unusual for us to be able to do that, and we were happy that we were able to do that in a way that was legal and we could get value out of this enormous store of data that we have. And the results of this UCLA study provide, I think, third-party validation of the success of our water conservation ordinance in reducing outdoor water use while maintaining the greenness of our landscape. That was one of the big takeaways, is that a lot of people were saying, oh, these ordinances are causing the city to brown up, and that wasn't the case. So that was very interesting to see that outcome. LEDP agrees with the 4 policy recommendations from this UCLA report, and let me give you a little status on kind of where we're at as we work through each of those 4. On tiered water pricing, since the 1993-94 Blue Ribbon Commission, LEDP rates have been a 2-tiered system with 100% volumetric pricing. So what that means, that last piece means, is that we charge totally based on the water you use. We do not have a fixed fee. There's no meter charge or service charge. If you don't use any water, you don't pay any money. That sends a tremendously strong conservation signal to our customers, and we think that's been kind of one of the bedrock successes of the pricing strategy that we've had. We are currently considering a 4-tier rate system as part of our overall rate adjustment package that we'll be bringing back to the council. We'll be working with stakeholders on this, and we expect to have something in the spring of next year. In response to Council Motion 14-1152, the Fuentes-Huizar motion, we will be presenting more details on the rates to this committee in an upcoming meeting. On water budgets, as Dr. Pincel said, our current rate structure is basically, it was actually one of the first water budget-based rate structures, and it was arrived at through a Citizens Blue Ribbon Committee as being, back in the early 1990s, a fair way of allocating water. And I think it's fair for us now to look at that and decide, are the values, are the policy issues of the city still in alignment with how water budgets were created 20 some odd years ago. So right now our water budgets are based on temperature. We have 3 different temperature zones within the city. We have 5 different lot sizes. We adjust for the number of people in the household if there's more than 6 people in the household. We have seasonal allocations if you're not in shortage conditions. Right now we are in shortage. And we have shortage year restrictions, and currently that's set at a 15% restriction. So just to kind of give you an idea, well, what does that mean? So really it's 2 tiers. So there's a certain amount of money certain amount of water that you're going to get at the lower rate, and then everything above that's going to be at a higher rate. So that'll vary for a small lot in a cool temperature zone, about 1,100 cubic feet or a little more than 8,000 gallons in a month, up to a large lot in a hot zone would get 5,500 cubic feet or about 41,000. So you can see there's quite a range of how much water somebody gets at that lower rate. It's 5 times the amount. That's going to be a policy issue that we're going to be, when we go out and do outreach with stakeholders and bringing back input to the council. From the utilities perspective, we obviously need to recover costs. How that gets allocated, then that becomes, part of the policy issue out there. So we'll obviously be working very closely with you. Our average, again, just to provide some context, our average customer uses 12 billing units, or 1,200 cubic feet, and that works out to about 75 gallons per person per day for a 4-person household. So you heard Dr. Pincel talk about 50 GPCD, so our average customer is at about 75 GPCD right now. Just for maybe for your interest, we talk about hundreds of cubic feet, and it's an awkward thing to deal with. And I was trying to figure out how I could talk to people about hundreds of cubic feet. What do we measure in hundreds of cubic feet? And I happened to be driving down the freeway. I thought of Councilman LaBonge on this one, and they always have these big tractor trailers that you get behind, and they tell you on the back side of them how many hundreds of cubic feet a tractor trailer holds. And so, lo and behold, one of these big 40-foot long tractor trailers is about 3,200 cubic feet. So that would be 32 billing units. So think of this would be, more than the average, but less than a large user would use up one of these tractor trailer 40-foot long containers of water in a month. That's the kind of water, the volume of water that we're talking about here.
Was it a water truck or a...
No, these would just be the regular. I guess you could fill it with water if you sealed it right.
Cattle truck? It was
These are
trash truck? What made you think of me, though, Jim? That's what I want to know. What made you think of me? It was a trash...
Because you're always looking for good examples, so I was looking for a good example. On indoor versus outdoor water use, and the irrigation submeter issue, in 1996, the City Council approved the use of private water submeters that measure outdoor water use separately from indoor use. About 900 customers per year take advantage of this program, so we've got quite a few of these out in the system. The use of the submeter allows for a more accurate sewer service charge, as we heard in the previous presentation here, because basically the water that goes to the submeter to the landscape is deducted from the calculation for a sewer service charge. So interestingly enough, with the current situation, it's to the customer's advantage to have as much water running through the submeter as possible, whereas if we implemented the recommendation, you'd be kind of flipping that, and there could be some unintended consequences associated with that. So well, not even only for sanitation, but for people deciding, well, I don't want my water to go through this, so I'm going to disconnect it and hook it up to a different thing, and how enforceable. So we have to work through. There's a lot of issues there we're going to have to work through. The concept we're in agreement with. How we get to that, we may need to work out some of the details. And we also want to look at some customers. This would be a very easy thing to do. They have their landscape taken off right near the main coming into the house. Other people have landscape all over, so you'd have to look at the cost versus the benefit on some of these. Information about this program for anybody that's listening to this or interested, that is available on our LADP and the LA Sanitation websites, and it's an optional program for our customers right now. And we're currently working to raise customer awareness. I know Councilman Bloomfield, we've had a lot of requests from the Valley. It's a popular program in the Valley, so we're trying to get the word out there so people who want to take advantage of that can do that. As far as increasing landscape options, we have expanded our landscape programs in recent years. A couple of the highlights include the Cash in Your Lawn incentives. We're currently at $3 per square foot, which is a pretty good incentive. We're getting a lot of uptake in that program right now. We're providing incentives for more efficient irrigation systems. We have a $200 rebate for weather-based irrigation controllers. We're offering up to $8 per nozzle to have people change the spray nozzles with the rotating nozzles, which are more efficient. And we're also doing a rain barrel program, so we've got rebates of $75 per rain barrel for up to 4 rain barrels in a household. And we're looking at what we can do in response to the drought to further provide some additional incentives, and looking at the levels that we're at on these, and so that's all in the works right now. You're going to be hearing more details about these landscape-specific programs on agenda item 2, which Mr. Pettyjohn will be presenting. So that's an update on where we're at on these things.
Do you have any questions? Mr. LaBonge?
Yeah, I just want to, on reclaimed water, where are we on reclaimed water? And I'm for the East Valley Water Reclamation Plan. Is that still possible? We go out tonight and turn it on?
The East Valley Water Reclamation Plant, there's going to be a groundwater replenishment program that we're going to have out there that'll provide advanced treated water, and we'll be recharging the groundwater basin with the highest treated water that's available out there. So we're working with sanitation to make that a reality.
Good. One other thing, and I do have a motion on this, Mr. Chair. I want to help Caltrans, the State Division of Highways, try to get reclaimed to the freeways. You know, you have a beautiful building up there at Hope Street, but there's very limited water that goes to the 4 level, which is the gateway to the central city at this part. It's very famous architecturally designed. You'd have a reclaimed water plan going to Elysian Park?
We've got we've got reclaimed water coming down San Fernando Road. The plan is to bring it across the freeway into Elysian Park, and then we would eventually be able to bring it down and get to the 4 level.
4 level.
I was just driving up the 5 right across from Griffith Park. I saw them installing purple pipe out there today, so they're doing it.
Make you feel good.
Yeah, it made me feel very good.
Yeah, and the other thing I just want to say, members, maybe you have a feeling on this. I hate to see us, I mean, I think it's fun civically if we do this here, if we said by zip code, but I don't know, I want sociologists to look at this because I don't want to turn neighborhoods against each other, but what zip code has the lowest reduction of water use? You know, like a civic pride. I remember when we used to have Milk Bowl Day in Los Angeles. No one remembers that here, where the third game every year of football season was the money went to needy to buy milk. I mean, that's how long ago it was. But so if we did it because I live at 1945 Lucille, but that's my street. I don't know what day I'm odd or even, you know, etc. But I think from a civic standpoint, if we say if everybody in 9039, you know, reduced it, that would be I think a way. I'm just throwing it out to us. What do you think? I want the professor who's UCLA USC. What do you think?
So I believe Mr. Pettijohn has some news on that front, right, about comparative billing. You're going to change the billing to show how you're doing relative to your neighbor?
Yes, we
I don't want to do neighbor, because it is very, I just think civically, if you do it by a region, just for the spirit.
It's kind of disaggregated. You know? So what you do is you, they'll give you a number for your bill. We're going to pilot this out. And it says, compared to your neighbors, you're in the lowest quadrant, or compared to your neighbors, you're in the top 10%. And it gives you some idea where you fit within your neighbors. We're not saying specifically.
It's been very successful in Burbank.
It has.
Extremely successful.
Yeah,
right, well, Burbank's about a fourth of each of our districts, separately. So it's nice to do that, but I just think it's civically, I see some of the other folks that I've known back there, I don't know what they think, but I think there's a civic pride to it because we have to change our way. I absolutely love water. If I could, I'd take my shoes off and use my water any which way I can, but I can't anymore. And I'm trying to reform myself, you know, which is wonderful because I don't have a pool, but it is cool when you could take a hose and you know, do what you do with the hose.
So your address ends in a 5?
Yeah. That's
an odd number. Right. Your watering days are Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Monday, Wednesday, Friday, yeah. No water on that. And let me ask another technical question on I remember the last time we had this serious thing, we also had more breakage. Does it have a difference in the underground system? If we all say, no water today, don't flush your toilet today, would that affect the plumbing of the city? Or could it affect the plumbing of the city?
It potentially could if there was absolutely no water use on any given day, but that doesn't happen. We've since we went to the staggered watering days, we really haven't seen any correlation between water breaks.
We didn't do staggering last time, did we?
That's why when we had the big break on cold water, we were all on one schedule, and then we split it into the odd and even.
All right, thank you very much.
Mr. Blumenfield.
A couple little things. The hosing down, when you see businesses hosing down the front of their lawn, I know we were trying to put a stop to that. Is that still a major factor?
It's still a prohibited use in the city. It's illegal to hose down hard surfaces.
Although I'm sure we all see that happening all the time.
Yeah, and we've you know, recently we've added we've quintupled or quadrupled the number of enforcement personnel that we had. We only had one guy enforcing this. We've now got a team of 4 people going out there to try to spot this and educate people and make sure people know about it first, but we are prepared to cite people if we see repeated violations.
Mr. Blumenfeld, the last time you created a DWP-approved high-intense spray, or what do you call it? It was a red water?
It's a water broom.
Is that legal?
Yes.
Okay, because I think sometimes people who have businesses, people either litter or defecate or urinate or all the other things that does cause a problem. So I don't want to stop that public health issue.
There is an exception for where cleanup needs to be done.
What's the name of that red? It was a DWP designed, approved.
Oh, the water broom?
Water broom.
Yeah.
Those are legal?
Yes.
Okay, good. And the last thing I'll jump right back to you is, our weather people in Los Angeles are very good people as ambassadors. Work with them and, have them do Wednesdays with water, or something like that. And I think that's the way we could do it. This is a big thing, but we could do it. And I know your leadership and those who follow you, Jim. Thank you.
Mr. Blumenfield.
Yeah, a couple other quick comments. The comparison thing to your neighbor, I think, is fantastic. I get a lot of representing the West Valley, water issues and billing issues are paramount, to say the least. A lot of people concerned, and people are always asking me. They're always trying to figure out if they have a leak, if they're compared to their neighbors, because everybody's convinced that they're using, that their system is leaking because they're using more water than everybody else. So it would be nice if people actually had that comparison.
Yes.
On the tiers, I think it's going to be it's important to get more tiers. And I certainly want to put a placeholder in when you talk about changing the variables. Temperature coming from the West Valley has got to be in there, because people in the West Valley are going to end up using more water just because of the temperature. But in terms of the tiers are a very good idea. The trick will be if we do move to tiers, doing it in such a way that it has public confidence that it's not just a back way to raise the rates, that it's actually, for some people this could be a savings. If there are more tiers, you could actually, if that means that more people are paying at the higher end, that means that people at the lower end are going to pay less. And getting that confidence, having the ratepayer advocate be part of that, and making it clear that it is not a backdoor rate increase, but it is a water conservation measure, will go a long way. Because I know in my district, there's going to be a lot of skepticism and a lot of assumptions about the tiers being a rate increase.
Yes, sir.
Very good.
Can I make a comment?
Please.
And since I am a academic, maybe you can use me as a kind of foil here. But I do think that we have to move to understand that different parts of the city do have different climates and did have different vegetation cover previously, and that it isn't really realistic to think that over time, in the next 20, 30, 40 years, particularly with the impacts of climate change, we can all have the same outdoor landscaping. And that, in fact, there's a kind of beauty to, and I think this is an attitude shift, an embracing of the place, that the coastal environment has a different kind of vegetation than the inland or than the valley. And part of civic pride would be to create place within LA. And that, in my opinion, is extremely important, so that people in the valley have a different climate than people along the coast. And I do not really believe that it's possible for everybody to have the same kind of landscaping either. So you have to take responsibility in a certain sense for managing your land, since we are, interested in property ownership and managing our landscape, appropriate to place. And I'm just saying that you can use me as, the dartboard person, but I think somebody has to begin to say these things as well, so that there is something, a future to look forward to that is not what we have today. So use me as the dartboard, but I'd like to at least put that in the public discourse.
And I would have to politely disagree with Mr. Blumenfield on sort of, the valley needing more water than other parts of the city. And to your point, I think, that's where this concept of sort of water budgets is really important to understand as individuals, people, how much water do we need versus what our properties need, and depending on sort of where they are. And I think that's sort of the behavioral sort of changes that are on the horizon for all of us. And so this is a fascinating conversation, and folks like the Theodore Payne Foundation and Sunland Tahunga can help people understand what California natives are to beautify and take advantage of the climate that people reside in, and there's ways to do it. So, but before I get too far into the commercials here, so the department is contemplating 4 different tiers, and this is really actually very exciting for me to hear, because in trying to understand, Dr. Pinsel, the work that you provided here, you know, a couple of things sort of jump out at me in the conversation, is that more affluent folks don't respond as well to the market signals, although I think you say that there's an assumption here that in Tier 1, everybody responds to a certain amount. And I think clearly education is the obvious thing that we've got to do, irrespective of income, to understand what it is that you need to be managing on your property. But if we're going to, and maybe the answer is already sort of in your proposal, if Tier 1 is the most effective way to obviate for people the need to reduce their consumption, districts like the Northeast San Fernando Valley, imagine parts of Los Angeles, where Tier 1 really hurts, simply changing the pricing on Tier 1 doesn't necessarily, I think, curb the behavior, or if it does, it really clobbers behavior for some other folks. So what sort of ideas and conversations are you all having to try to figure out, maybe it's the 4-tier sort of mechanism that smooths that sort of impact, but if Tier 1 is the place where we get some response, how do you do it so you don't impact really already sort of economically impacted parts of Los Angeles?
So I think you know, we say Tier 1, and Tier 1 in a 2-tiered structure is one thing, but Tier 1 in a 4-tiered structure might be something entirely different. So as I mentioned, right now in our Tier 1, we've got some customers that are getting 5 times as much water as others in Tier 1, regardless of the number of people in the household. So one concept that we're working with right now is that Tier 1, that may perhaps be water that is needed for basic sanitation, drinking, and cooking. And that would be based on the number of people in the household. And it would be the same whether you lived in a big lot in a hot area or it'd be in a small lot in a poorer area and a colder area. And then you would tier off that from Tier 2 being something that would be related to a certain kind of, maybe a certain kind of landscaping. If you had the Theodore Payne, California native, perfect type landscape, there would be a certain allocation based on that. And that may have to get into lot size or greened area size. It was very interesting, one of the things in the UCLA study, when these rates were done in 1992, we didn't have all the satellite imagery and all the things that we have now. So we based the thing based on lot size, which was in the assessor's parcel books, because that's the data that they had. We now have a lot more granular data available to us, and we can be looking at things like, well, how much of the greened area is there? And this may also fit in, you know, under a one water concept. We're also looking at how are we going to deal with stormwater. So you may want to look at greened area has certain advantages and maybe certain things, and paved over areas that have runoff associated with them may have other kinds of consequences that may have to be dealt with. And we're working with sanitation and, you know, to try to make sure that we're being holistic about the way we look at this. And then, you know, there might be another tier for if you want to pay for a unnatural type garden that uses a lot of water, and then there may be something for people that just don't care and they're basically wasting water, and that would be a wastage tier, sure, you know, for people that are using water to respond. These are some of the ideas. We don't have a proposal for you yet because we're still working with these, and we need to do some outreach with community, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But these are some of the concepts that are out there with other tiered structures that we're looking at. We're looking at to see, you know, what works. Irvine Ranch is one of the ones out there that's had a pretty successful tiered structure, and so we're kind of looking at what they've been doing, and we're going to try to come back with something that we feel is going to address the, as you said, the unique aspects of Los Angeles, but also is going to be sensitive to the fact that as Dr. Pincel said, one of our highest correlations is water uses with household income, and so we need to make sure that we are not doing something that's going to adversely impact the low-income folks either, who are actually some of our most thrifty water users. You don't want to, send a negative signal to them. So it's a delicate balance.
And so has there been any sort of additional look into how to I'll say educate, maybe it's inform, sort of the more affluent customer that behavior? I mean, so if you want to be a non-native sort of keeper of landscape options and you're willing to pay for it, I think that is actually, it's hard to say okay, but I understand it. But, has there been a look into maybe sort of what incentives might trigger people to sort of want to participate in more conservation? Because to me, that's sort of, so 11,000 square foot in the lot in the San Fernando Valley, the luxury for me is the 140 square feet of vegetable gardens, the chickens, and and feeling pretty guilty about my lawn that will come out soon enough. But at some point, how do you sort of make it so that other folks want to participate in this? If the market signal for the affluent customer isn't enough to motivate folks to change their sort of behavior, and again, depending on where you live in the city of Los Angeles, what other ideas are out there to sort of help sort of incentivize different behavior?
Well, I mean, there's the carrot and the stick type approaches. Wasting water, and some of these higher end uses you do find water waste. You find water running into the gutters. That's just illegal, and we're going to try to stop that through enforcement type actions. And one of the reasons that we're in agreement with the recommendation to go to more tiers is it's pretty apparent to us that our existing structure does not. We just don't have that economic signal to these higher end uses. One of the other problems with our current two-tier structure is due to some other technical issues we have with the way the rate structure is put together. We don't have a very big difference between the two tiers. There's only about a 12% differential currently. That needs to get fixed. So there needs to be a price signal. I think the best thing that we can do is to send the appropriate price signal and then have people make responsible choices.
So along those lines, I didn't intend it to be a setup, but so in thinking about this new billing system that we have and the hope that it will have, all of the bells and whistles to be able to do some really interesting things, and understanding that we don't have a very good take rate on 2 meters, and to your point earlier, it may be gamed depending on sort of how your place is set up. It may not sort of be beneficial. Is there the capability, I have to believe that there is there a capability in the software to be able to create a virtual meter for folks to help them understand, or at least sort of help manage a water budget? So this way, if it's not going to be sort of market signals, carrots and sticks, at least maybe it's information and education where people say, gosh, I'm a water hog relative to sort of my area there, and this virtual meter helps me understand that I'm doing more outside than I probably should. I mean, that type of stuff has to be within our sort of capability.
Yeah, and I think we have some abilities to do the analysis and determine what the normal indoor water use is, and there's going to be some errors with that. Some of the automated meter infrastructure tools that would be available to us once we get automated meters on the water side will also provide us with some data that could help refine that, even without, like as you suggested, create possibly a virtual meter based on analytical data, and then we could share that with customers. So those are things that potentially could be available. We would have to get the automated meter infrastructure put into place, which we currently don't have. So
I see Dr. Pincel sort of wincing at the idea of automated meters. I just, in sort of my desperation to want to deploy as much information as possible, how many sort of double meters do we have out there now? You said 900, I think was the number?
Well, we've had, it's about 900 a year, 900 customers a year take advantage of the program. We think there's somewhere, I didn't bring the number with me. I was asking staff, I think around 20,000.
20,000, we've got what, 1.8, 1.9 million
we
meters
have
out there?
680,000 water meters out there, so it's a small percentage of our total base.
Let me let you, the punchline is that we're going to hold the report because as you all come back with your information on the rate analysis and that sort of thing, we're going to want to keep this to be able to sort of contrast with what we're doing. But Mr. Blumenfield, before I get to you, I wanted to make an observation and a small request for you all to think about so that when you come back, Department, you can help us understand how we solve the following problem, Jim. So landscape options, I think are important. The Cash for Grass program, very good. And the maps, I think, were very helpful. Districts like mine are the natural conservationist because when money gets tight, the information demonstrates that folks stop watering their lawn. So you can drive through much of my district and notice all of the dead grass in people's sort of yards. And what's happened before, having grown up there, I've witnessed this, and I'm sure this is true for most of Los Angeles, is that when it gets super hot like this, we let it go. But when it starts getting a little bit more comfortable, that's when we we come back and start watering it again. I don't know how we get those folks to be able to take the landscape options that are being provided by this program because they already have the dead grass. But the capability of something to come back and waste water, i.e. the sprinkler systems, the fact that they've done nothing to sort of change the landscape options, I think precludes them from actually getting into this program. And it seems to me there's an opportunity today to be able to say, yes, it's dead, but when the weather cools down, you're going to start watering it again like everybody that I know growing up did. Here's an opportunity to sort of get them too, because the opportunity to change sort of their behavior is going to be important, next year when El Nino hits, or the year after when the drought ends, or not. But the point is that I don't think that we're helping that constituency because they don't have the green grass right now. Would love for you to consider that because I don't know all of the parameters of the program, but I do know you have to demonstrate that you've got green out front. But I also know that these folks are going to start seeding and spraying water as soon as the temperature cools down, and we should sort of get them now while the getting is good.
That's a really good point. We'll take a look at that.
Very good. Mr. Blumenfield.
Okay, thank you. And you mentioned Theodore Payne Society in your district. They're coming to my district next week on the 27th.
Workshop, yes.
We're doing a workshop for folks to learn, and we already have 75 people signed up for it.
And after they do it there, they're going to do it back at the Pacoima District Office on October 4th. So thank you for the reminder.
We got those.
And I'm on the board.
Oh, well, there you go.
All right.
But I was just, it's, when you do pull out your lawn, it is a big, I just went through this in my house. We pulled out our front lawn and put in, all drought tolerant plants. It takes a lot of, you have to lay out a lot of capital. It's a big project. I mean, having undergone it, and it's not always, if you forget to do the rebate in the right time, you're not going to get to take advantage of the rebate. What I think will ultimately cause an explosion in people doing this kind of re-landscaping will be when we move to on-bill financing. And when it's no longer a case of getting a rebate, laying it out, and doing all the work yourself, but when it's a case of DWP coming to you and saying, or a contractor coming and saying, we will take out your lawn and redo it for nothing. And in fact, and then you will start to see savings on your bill, and you'll get part of your, the cost of this will be borne over time. Here's the interest rate, here's what you get. But you as the homeowner have to do nothing other than sign on the dotted line and get to the billing. We can do that now. We had a problem with that for several years, and I'm very familiar with this because it was actually my bill in the state legislature that started this project. But with the HERO program and others, we can do it. So when, what do you think about moving to that in that direction, and when do you think we could start seeing more of that?
You mentioned the contractors doing that. When we went up to $3, there actually were some contractors that were going around and they were offering to do this. Now, I don't know what quality of a job you get at $3 a square foot, because you said it's a major deal.
What I've heard from people who took advantage of that is you get 2 plants.
Yeah, and that's a problem too. But the on-bill financing, it's an intriguing thing. We've looked at that. We've been having so much trouble with the billing system right now. The billing people have said, just go away. We need to get the billing fixed before we start adding anything else. But it's definitely something we can look at. I tend to agree with you. I've been having this discussion with my wife at my house, and she really doesn't want to do it. But I think if it was just a matter of somebody coming in and saying, we'll take care of it for you, and it's all done behind the scenes, that is probably going to be a real deal changer for a lot of people. So I agree with you.
Has UCLA, have you studied that idea at all in terms of the financing mechanism impacting the water conservation?
No.
All right, well, I'll put it on your to-do list then.
I appreciate that.
Because I really do think it'll make a huge difference.
But there is the equivalent in the electricity area with the PACE programs.
It's the exact program.
Yeah.
It was the same bill
Yeah.
that I did that
excellent.
allowed the extension of the PACE program for electric.
Right.
That allows it for water conservation.
And we've had it on the toilet with the toilet rebate. Basically, we're at that point now where contractors will go out to an apartment house and just say, we'll change out all your toilets. It's no cost to you. You don't have to worry about it.
That's still rebate-based.
It's rebate, but it goes directly to it's between we've set it up so the contractor can do it between the contractor and the department. The property owner doesn't even have to get involved. Yes.
Because ultimately that's where you're going to see this. Just
I agree.
Massive change.
Sure. Well, clearly there's a lot of interest. Thank you, Dr. Pinsel, and all the folks at UCLA, Go Bruins, for helping us do all of this.
Sorry about that basketball floor, by the way.
Poly Pavilion. But we'll continue the item in committee for further review as part of the conversations when we get to the rate analysis. And I think there's a lot of things here that we can sort of do to hopefully incent people to participate more, whether it's on-bill financing or making it so that we have the program available to folks who've already let their lawns die. I think we're going to have to really demonstrate a lot of value for the ratepayers in order for us to do that. But in the meantime, I'd like to have Dr. Pickle up for the ratepayer advocate come and comment on this, and we do have one speaker card on this. Dr. Pickle, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Fred Pickle, Office of Public Accountability, Ratepayer Advocate. In most jurisdictions, when reviewing electric utility rates, it's a two-part process. First, you look at revenue requirements for the utility as a whole, and then once those are decided, you do rate structuring separately. The city's pattern is to combine those two things, so you can't cleanly separate, well, gee, the utility just wants more money, from, well, here's how we're going to allocate it into various groups. So we have part of that challenge in this discussion. But we think most of the recommendations that UCLA are from the UCLA report are good. We encourage a review of the water rate structure in this process. And we think it's time for a thorough discussion of a multi-tiered rate for water, given today's water challenges.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Pickle. We do have one speaker card, Connor Everts. Very good. All right, so that concludes that item.
Not that you don't want to hear.
Not good that Mr. Everts left. I'm sure that he had something very good to say from the Southern California Watershed Alliance, but we will take that card, note it for the file, and we will continue that item. Since we have a quorum, Mr. Labange, we would like to take up item 4, I believe. Is that right, Mr. Prieto?
Number 3?
I'm sorry, 3. That's right. Number 3, the recommendation was to deny the sewer service charge appeal request for an adjustment refund beyond the 1-year period threshold consistent with the city charter, and seeing no objection, that shall be the order for the full city council to consider. I think that takes us to item number 2.
Certainly. Item number 2. Motion, Cedillo, Bloomfield, relative to instructing requests in Bureau of Sanitation and DWP to report on strategies and methods that are being used to manage drought conditions in arid climates and related matters. You have staff from Department of Water and Power, Bureau of Sanitation, and they've also submitted a report.
Very good. Good afternoon. Before you start, help us understand. So I introduced a motion in the first quarter of the year, and we had a report, and the idea is to discuss this issue quarterly. So help us understand what's sort of changed from the last time that you all came in and reported to us, and I think that would completely encompass the intent of Mr. Cedillo and Mr. Blumenfield's motion.
Well, that's exactly what this presentation is designed to do. It's designed to give you a feel for everything that we've done here in 2014, which is really an update since we've been here last time. And you'll see a lot of new programs and things that we're trying to do in response to the drought and to try to put some more juice into our conservation programs. So
very good.
What we have here today is about a 20-minute presentation, about 28 slides, so I can move through it fairly quickly. I'm David Pettyjohn. I'm the Director of Water Resources for LA Water and Power, and with me is Penny Falcon. She's the manager of our water conservation programs.
I'm Doug Walters, Assistant Division Manager with Wastewater Engineering from Sanitation.
I'm Roshana Flakey. I'm the Water Reclamation Plant Managers.
Okay, so we'll get started. This slide shows that LADWP has a lot of sources of water. About 88% of our water supplies come from imported sources hundreds of miles away, which are susceptible to drought and weather conditions. The two water supply sources that have been most impacted by the current drought are the state water projects, which you see here on this slide in heavy red, and also the Los Angeles aqueduct system. The State Water Project system is experiencing its fifth driest year of record and will only deliver 5% of contracted supplies this year. And similarly, the LA Aqueduct system is experiencing a record dry year and will deliver the least amount of water it has in its 100-year history, bringing only 61,000 acre-feet of water to the city this year. This slide demonstrates that during dry years, when our LA Aqueduct supplies are impacted, we rely more heavily on purchased water from the Metropolitan Water District, which you see here in orange from the State Water Project and blue from the Colorado River Aqueduct. The left pie chart shows our water supply portfolio for an average year, and the right pie chart shows our water supply in this current dry year. As you can see, MWD reliance has jumped from 52% up to 75% of the city's water supply this year. The majority of that purchased water comes from the Delta through the State Water Project, which, as I mentioned before, is experiencing a critically dry year. This slide shows regional storage reserves available to Southern California from the Metropolitan Water District and how they've responded over the years. The region has currently about, at the beginning of this year, 2.4 million acre-feet of water in storage, this is to the far right. But we're drawing that down, and by the end of the year, we'll have drawn about 1 million acre-feet out of that storage, leaving only 1.2 to 1.4 million acre-feet in regional storage at the end of the year. So thanks to the city's drought response and our investments in regional storage, we will be able to meet the city's demands for our customers for the remainder of 2014. However, without a wet winter, MWD will in all likelihood implement water rationing in 2015. If MWD does implement rationing, the city may need to implement additional water use restrictions.
When's the last time MWD rationed water to us?
As you can see on this graph, you go back, Penny, 2008 and 2009 were 10% allocation years, and they did, the Metropolitan Water District Board typically, when they get down to about 1 million acre-feet in regional storage, they implement their rationing plan.
Got it.
Next slide. So due to the dry conditions, as you all know, the governor declared a drought state of emergency statewide on January 17th, and on the 29th of July, the State Water Resources Control Board followed suit and adopted statewide emergency conservation regulations. These regulations will remain in effect through April 25th of 2015, at which time the State Water Resources Control Board may choose to extend those regulations. The State Board's emergency regulations require urban water agencies to implement water shortage contingency plans to a level where restrictions on outdoor irrigation are mandatory. Furthermore, all Californians are required to comply with prohibitions against various forms of waterways, some of which are shown on this slide: hosing down driveways and sidewalks, overwatering that causes runoff, etc. Now, the city's of LA's Phase 2 Water Conservation Ordinance, which is currently in place, complies with all of these State Board requirements, but it also includes additional restrictions on water waste, such as no watering between the hours of 9 a.m. and 4 p.m., no water in restaurants unless it's requested by the customer, leak repair mandates, and no outdoor irrigation on days when it's raining.
And we went into Phase 2 over a year ago, didn't we?
That's correct.
That's right. Before the state.
That's right. So LADWP is doing quite a few things in response to this drought. We've expanded our water conservation response unit. We call it our water crew, as Jim mentioned, to enforce Phase 2 of the city's water conservation ordinance. We've increased our staff to 16 members, 4 full-time members, which you see here, but also 2 part-time have been added, and we also have the ability to increase to 9 personnel if we need to. We've also added new car wraps that you see here to improve customer visibility of our patrol cars. A few enforcement statistics for you. From 2009 to 2012, we received 30,000 reports of ordinance violations. Of those reports, 9,000 were issued warnings or citation letters, and 300 monetary fines were issued to repeat offenders. However, since January of 2014, just this year, we've received over 4,000 reports of violations, and of those reports, we've issued 2,000 warnings and citation letters. But as of now, we have not had to issue any repeat offenders fines. Next slide. Customers can report water waste through a variety of means in the city now. They can email waterwaste@ladwp.com or call 1-800-LADW, dial LADWP, and that's 1-800-342-5397.
I'm going to go call right now.
I was thinking you might do that. LADWP has partnered with the city to give residents the ability to report water waste on my LA 311 website and phone app. And we also currently...
Just a question, because I want to forget.
Yes, sir.
Maybe you could post someone from DWP at our 311 call center in City Hall East, daylight hours, and you could flip them right in there where they all do water. That's an idea, Mr. Chair, just to post someone, transfer them over for a period of time.
Okay.
If you want, just a thought.
Okay, we'll write that down. We're also currently consulting with LAPD to evaluate their potential assistance if needed. Next slide. From January to July of this year, we've invested over $500,000 in our water conservation messaging. And as shown above, we're advertising on bus tails and also new this year, bus benches and bus shelters. We also advertise in movie theaters. We've had 110 screens around the city, totaling 58,000 viewings this year. And also our radio spot ads, 12 stations, totaling 900 airings. And we're advertising online through targeting the specific geographic regions of the city of Los Angeles and in a variety of newspapers, LA Times, City Watch, La Opinion, Daily News, and we also outreach to 30 community newspapers, including various foreign language papers. So now you're going to hear our radio spot ad, and this is reporting is Jay Gardner from K-Earth.
California is in a drought, and water supplies are limited. About 50% of LA's drinking water is used to irrigate lawns. Conserve that water. LA limits watering with sprinklers to 3 days a week, depending on your address. Odd-numbered addresses make water on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Even-numbered ones on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. Before 9 a.m. or after 4 p.m. Know your watering days. For water conservation tips, visit ladwp.com/water conservation. ladwp.com/water conservation.
I want it to hold out.
Okay, we've also developed a variety of conservation education and promotional materials that you see here. These materials are handed out at community events and also are accessible from download from our website. The bottom left you see our new restaurant tent cards showing that water is served only upon request. And on the bottom center is a copy of the postcard that went out to all 480,000 single-family residential customers, notifying them of their watering days. And Penny has a copy of that right here. During August of this year, more than 3,000 television ads on water conservation have aired on 15 cable networks. In addition, through Time Warner Cable, we have posted 300,000 online TV and banner ads on 200 different websites, utilizing web-based focusing within our service territory. We're going to play LADWP's water conservation public service announcement for you now, and this PSA is playing on TV and also in movie theaters.
Water in LA is limited. Every drop is precious, but we can all do our share. Fix water leaks, replace grass with California-friendly plants, and get a rebate of up to $3 per square foot. Run your sprinklers based on your street address. Odd addresses on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Even addresses on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. Before 9 a.m. or after 4 p.m. The future of LA is in our hands. And that's a good thing.
Okay, looking forward, LADWP plans to spend another $500,000 on its ad campaign between September this month and the end of the year. Some new things we've developed are shown here, and they include hotel towel rack hangers to offer patrons the option to reuse their towels, waterways door hangers for outreach to your neighbors, water conservation calendars which showcase art from our grade school water conservation poster contest, and we're also working on 3 new public service announcements to air on television and in movie theaters. In addition, we've been very active this year with our grassroots community outreach. We've made guest speaking Presentations at various venues, including at World Fest, before the LA County Commission Board, at the Federal Regional Council, and at the Los Angeles Neighborhood Initiative Forum. We've made presentations before various neighborhood councils, including the LA Neighborhood Council Coalition and the Valley Alliance of Neighborhood Councils. And we've staffed water conservation outreach booths at various community events, including Earth Day, LA River Day, and the Mar Vista Farmers Market, among others. Something new this year, we awarded 3 community partnership outreach grants of $90,000 each with nonprofit groups to assist with water conservation outreach. One went to the Los Angeles Neighborhood Land Trust, another to the Los Angeles Community Garden Council, and the third to Selva International. Selva International is providing hands-on workshops to our residential customers, where customers can learn how to remove turf, do grading and mulching, and install a rain barrel on their property. We've also increased our collaboration with other agencies during the drought. We're partnering with the Bureau of Sanitation on One Water LA 2040 plan and various stormwater capture opportunities. We're working with the Metropolitan Water District and its 25 member agencies to develop regional drought rationing plan. This plan will be ready for implementation next year and will cover all of Southern California. We're partnering with agencies such as Rec and Parks, the Fire Department, and Caltrans to assist them in reducing their water use. And we're working with the golf industry through the Golf Industry Task Force to explore opportunities to reduce water use through turf removal and recycle water at 35 golf courses throughout our service territory. We've collaborated in variety of drought response coordination meetings through various water industry organizations, including the California Urban Water Agencies, the California Urban Water Conservation Council, the California Municipal Utilities Association, and the Association of Water Agencies. And we've actively participated and provided feedback through the State Water Resources Control Board's emergency drought regulation drafting process. We've received record-breaking earned media opportunities regarding our drought response and water conservation activities. Just from January through July of this year, our staff has participated in over 300 earned media opportunities, including 86 radio interviews, 27 television interviews, 95 online news articles, and 52 print news articles. These include interviews with the LA Times, USA Today, La Opinion, Daily News, Fox, NBC, and the City News Service. Thanks to our water conservation education and outreach activities, which took off in April, public awareness on the importance of conservation, conserving water during this drought has increased dramatically, as you see here. From April to August this year, there have been 53,000 visitors to our water conservation websites compared to 24,000 for the same months last year. And in July and August of this year, as you can see, we have seen a huge surge in our website traffic to more than twice what it was last year. This greater public awareness has resulted in commercial and residential rebates increasing by 187% this year compared to last year. And as a result, in fiscal year 13-14, we achieved just under 4,000 acre-feet per year of water savings through our rebate programs, as compared to 2012-2013, when we received about half that much. We're experiencing a tremendous surge in participation in our residential turf removal program, as you see here. Thanks to our fall 2013 outreach campaign and increases in our incentive payments in May of this year from $2 to $3 per square foot of turf removed. Some statistics on our success. From July 13 to July 14, we've removed 1.72 million square feet of turf, which is equivalent to 1,142 front yards. Since the commercial and residential turf removal program started, we've removed a total of 8.8 million square feet of turf, and we estimate the water savings from this commercial and residential program have saved the city 278 million gallons of water per year. To encourage residents to switch over to California-friendly landscape, LADWP is providing free residential training classes to share information and advice on how to transform your lawn into a beautiful California-friendly garden. These free classes are held in downtown Los Angeles and in Van Nuys. The schedule for our upcoming classes is shown here on the left. And these classes are about 3 hours long on a Saturday morning, and they're extremely popular. We're working on a California-friendly landscape website, shown on the right, that will contain information and photos on plants available for replacement. And this website will contain landscape design templates that can assist residents interested in converting over to a California-friendly garden. And we plan to launch this website later this month. We're also in the process of installing a California-friendly demonstration garden at LADWP's John Ferraro headquarters building, and there will be 2 different styles of California-friendly landscapes in that garden showcased, and we're planning to begin that planning in this fall. LADWP, in partnership with the LA Department of Rec and Parks and the LA Conservation Corps, hired young people for the summer to assist in city park retrofits. Young people are learning how to perform maintenance work on irrigation systems, remove turf, and plant California-friendly landscapes. Over 100 young people have been hired, and the program began in July of this year. LADWP's Water Conservation Group has partnered with other city groups to support the new Los Angeles Discovery Cube Science Center at Hanson Dam, shown here. This center will showcase exhibits on water and energy conservation, local water supplies, and the LA Aqueduct. The center's water conservation highlight will be the Sustainability House, which will educate visitors on water-efficient appliances, California-friendly plants, and teach visitors how to identify leaks. The center plans to have its grand opening on November 13th of this year. Water systems across the country, including ours, often get accused of wasting water by having leaky systems. This can be true, for example, in Philadelphia. They have a 40% leak rate. So in response to some of this, we were anxious to confirm our level of water waste due to system leakage. So we recently completed the first in-depth water loss audit and component analysis of our entire water system. To accomplish this goal, we hired a technical expert in the water loss audit and in water loss auditing and to quantify our losses and make recommendations on how to reduce our system losses. The project determined that the non-revenue water percentage in the city of LA is just 5.2%, as you see here. Out of this non-revenue total, real losses, and this is total system leakage, accounts for only 3.5% of water supplied. Apparent losses, which are meter inaccuracies and theft, and unbilled uses like fire flows and system flushing account for the remaining 1.7%. To put this into some perspective, the U.S. industry benchmark standard for what is considered an efficient water system is 10%. So we're very proud to have a non-revenue percentage that is less than about half of the industry standard. But there's still room for improvement, and LADWP is launching a water loss audit task force which will assist which will assess the technical experts' recommendations that we received and implement an action plan to further reduce our water loss across the city. You see here 2 new water conservation projects that we're working on. On the left is one that I think will answer some of the questions that the council has been raising. It's our Water Insight Pilot Study, which is a behavioral efficiency program that aims to educate customers on their water use and how it compares to their neighbors. The pilot will provide study group customers with bi-monthly home water use reports and provide the study group with access to an online web portal which will give them customer detailed information on their water use and on LADWP's water conservation programs. Other cities that have conducted this pilot study see about a 5% reduction in overall water use from this interactive educational tool. On the right is our water conservation potential study, which we launched in June of this year. This study will help us to assess current program saturation levels, determine the remaining potential for our current conservation programs, and identify new emerging conservation technologies, and assist the development of new cost-effective conservation programs. This study is going to be completed in the fall of next year and will assist us in our long-term planning to meet our 2035 water conservation goals. As a result of all our water conservation efforts, in July we saw a 4.4% reduction in water use citywide, and in August the water use reduction doubled to 8.8%, as you see here. You will notice that May's water use actually increased, and this was due to the abnormally high average temperature for the month, which was a full 7 degrees above normal. We've accomplished these water use reductions this year despite extremely hot weather. So far, 2014 on average is 4 degrees hotter than the long-term average temperature conditions for Los Angeles. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, you can see that May was much hotter at 7 degrees above normal. Likewise, precipitation this year has been much lower than average. LA's normal precipitation for January through August should be over 10 inches of rain, but so far there's been only 5 inches of rain. This extremely dry weather makes it much harder to increase water conservation levels. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, consideration must be given to our city's long-standing successful water conservation program, which began in earnest back in the late 70s. To date, our customers have achieved over 110,000 acre-feet a year of water conservation through efficient hardware installations alone, and we're continuing to invest heavily in water conservation rebates, outreach, and education programs to promote permanent customer behavior change, which has resulted in an additional 17% in water savings just since 2009 alone. This graph shows that through the city's conservation programs, we've kept our water demand flat despite a population increase in the city of over 1 million new customers. And finally, the city of Los Angeles' gallon per capita per day is down to 130, which is one of the lowest for any major city in the entire United States. This concludes my presentation. We'd be happy to take any questions you might have. Thank you.
All right, Mr. LeBlanc?
I just want to make sure we're pulling in the reclaim and all the way factor and see more of a percentage of that in any which, you know, your pie was very good. I like this PowerPoint. Do you have a copy of a PowerPoint, printed PowerPoint?
Yes, and we'll make it available to your staff. And
you know, on that issue, I like your outreach. Who's the biggest water user in the city? Commercial is still Anheuser-Busch?
Well, we don't usually give that.
I know you don't usually give it out, but you know, you know, it's like asking who the LAUSD. You know,
maybe this is off the record, but I think it's the Bureau of Sanitation.
Really? Really?
Not off the record anymore.
Off the record, I know. Rick Orloff, are you still working? So anyway, I like Anheuser-Busch. I'm just saying, I know it's a big water user, which is good. I hope we work with our big customers. They understand you. They're in business, you're in business, this is very important, you know, because I think it is going to be multiple years in a change in lifestyle. I do think we should possibly have a conference, and maybe USC and UCLA should get involved, and you be the lead of how we, with architects, how we change it, because there is a beauty to green, and it's so much in our brain and fixed in our brain. But there is a challenge if you have to make choices between the green lawn and food on the table, you got to go food on the table. So how do we transform that? We're not Scottsdale, Arizona, which is a dry desert climate. We're not Palm Springs, California. But, you know, how do we do that? How can we make a difference? Because I think there is a value, whatever the broken windows concepts all starts in the neighborhood and how it's looked at. So something to think about, because I think this is a multi-year change drastically. The professor mentioned, excuse the machine in front of you, professor, but the professor mentioned the global warming and all those things that are real, that we got to really change how we do it. And then at the same time, Bob, I was thinking too, you know, sometimes for public health issues, you know, I know they wash down some places, some arenas where there's constant people, and how did we do all that? So there's a balance. And I want to be fair and firm, but not fine and firm. I don't want to go out and fine everybody. Educate them, you know. And if they're abusing it continually, then you got to fine them. But be fair as you educate the public.
Yeah, and we agree with that. And we're primarily trying to educate people, and we only find people who are repeat offenders.
And I also want to say, too, on behalf of all the horses that live in my district and use Griffith Park, Mr. Fuentes is a great equestrian booster. I want to make sure we take care of the animals. I did talk to the zoo the other day to make sure that they, with this hot weather, if Billy wants more water on his back, give it to Billy. You know, so I just wanted to make sure that that's an outreach because of their special needs, and horses too as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sanitation.
Thank you. Doug Walters again, Sanitation. Just a great success story here, but just a reminder that we're in this incredible window of opportunity, which we call and want to remind you is the One Water LA plan. This is a comprehensive, collaborative approach to develop an integrated framework for managing all of the city's water resources, watersheds, and water facilities in an environmentally, economically, and socially beneficial manner. That's done through conservation and increasing water supply reliability, as well as improving the health of local watersheds, implementing, monitoring, and maintaining a reliable wastewater system, implementing effective policies and ordinances for integrated water resources management, projects that provide multiple benefits to city residents. We talked about climate change, so incorporating adaptation and mitigation to address the significant drought that we're experiencing, as well as increasing community awareness and advocacy for sustainability. So, beyond just our two departments, this is a citywide effort. We're reaching out to other city departments as well as other agencies that work in and around the region to come up with this collaborative effort. This Saturday is the Neighborhood Congress. Folks will have tables there to reach out to individual folks that want to join in this conversation. November 6th is our next stakeholder workshop where we encourage people to get in and talk about these concepts, because many of the ideas that came to fruition over these last 15 years as part of the Water Integrated Resources Plan came from those folks, whether it was issues from equestrian folks, purple pipe, dual plumbing, waterless urinals, the low-impact development ordinance, which have a huge impact on our development in our city, permeable pavement, et cetera. So certainly want to remind you and encourage you to have people get involved with the One Water umbrella. And real quickly, I want to pass it over to Roshana Flaki to talk about water recycling projects.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to highlight a couple of water recycling projects just to remind all of us on the efforts that the city has taken in the water recycling arena. The Recycled Water Master Plan was completed in 2012. It was a collaboration between DWP and LA Sanitation, which evaluated recycling alternatives. And it integrated two strategies: groundwater replenishment as well as non-potable reuse. An advanced water purification facility is being planned at Donald C. Tillman Water Reclamation Plant, which will produce up to 30,000 acre-foot per year of highly purified recycled water, which will be used for replenishment of groundwater basin in San Fernando Valley. And the EIR for this project started in 2012. Another project that I wanted to bring to you is the Terminal Island Water Reclamation Plant expansion that currently produces 5 million gallons per day of highly purified recycled water used for the Dominguez Gap barrier. And this facility will be expanded to produce 12 MGD of highly purified recycled water. And this project is estimated to come online in early 2017.
Very good.
Thank you.
Mr. Blumenfield.
Yeah, just a comment. I mean, I'm very excited about all these presentations. I mean, I love the fact that we're pushing the envelope on this, on recycled water. I think we all share those goals, and I want to just continue the encouragement of going down that path, looking also at the water bond that's coming down the pike, make sure that we're positioned to take advantage of that in the best way we can. And also to note, and I know you know this, but we're not alone in this, in that around the world, there are other folks who are doing a lot on this that we should look to, and even other Mediterranean ecosystems like ours, which is not unique, but is rare, is only in certain places. A couple of years ago, I went to Israel and went to the WATEC convention, which has to do with water conservation, and saw some of the things that they're doing. I mean, they have a much worse problem than we do, but they don't have a drought. I mean, they have a drought, but they don't have a water problem because they charge more for water, but they have, but they've got they're 100% on their recycling practically, and a number of things. And in fact, toward that end, one of the reasons I set up the Israel-Los Angeles Task Force was specifically to deal with water conservation. So I want to make sure that all of you get involved in that task force as well, because it's the idea of trying to take advantage. We're leaders in many ways, but when we look around the world and we see other folks who are leading in this area and in water conservation, there are some folks who are ahead of us that we take advantage of that. So I just appreciate all that you're doing, and I get jazzed about all this stuff, so thank you.
That's great. Just as a reminder, we have a platform. The Water Reuse Association will be hosting their annual California conference March here in downtown LA. So we'll have folks from Israel, Turkey, Australia, as well as Florida, Texas, and California, where they're really grappling with a lot of these issues to make presentations to. So you'll be invited to attend that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. We do have two speakers.
Before we do it, just a thing to our fire department, in the past, has always used hydrants to practice. Now there's a challenge because every drop of water. Make sure that you work with the fire department and give them alternatives and other ways, because it's a dry season and they have to practice. So whether it's drafting out at Lake Balboa or at Echo Park or some other place, I think it's real important. So I want to look to you, to Mr. Pettyjohn, to make sure that we still afford that. And I know what Mr. Blumenfeld just spoke of there, and the Council General, David Siegel, very special on that. I get hit up all the time. Why not reclaim water? Why not, ocean water? Why not that?
Well, actually, we at one point were thinking about seawater desalination, and we came to the conclusion that until we exhaust some of the local supplies here that are actually more cost-effective, that we would put that on hold. So we are going to maximize conservation, water recycling, and groundwater cleanup and conservation prior to spending the money on desal, because it gets very expensive, much more expensive than some of our other local water supply options.
Well, I want to ask the CLA to do a motion on that for me. I don't want you to not do it. I want you to just put it on the back burner if you think so. But I want you to have it there, because look where we are now.
Yeah.
Maybe it would have been. And also, waterworks from around the world. I want to compliment Jerry Gateway, retired, Department of Water and Power. He spends his vacation in Africa helping bring water to communities in need. There's a lot of great people at Water and Power, and Jerry, I know, is one of them. So I just think that's a very good point. You talked to the international scene. There's one of our own who's doing it with others. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Labange. Oh, sorry.
Councilmember Labange, I would like to tell you that we have been working with LA Fire Department, and they did reach out to us, and we've provided them places to do their testing, engineering testing. It's going to happen later this year, and we're going to actually reuse that water.
Super.
Very good. Adam Lane and Gary Cook.
Hey, what else?
Yeah, I got it. They're easy. Very good, gentlemen. Mr. Cook.
Councilman, my name is Gary Cook. I'm here on behalf of UA Plumbers Local 78 and Pipe. As we all know, the city is in the midst of a serious drought. At Local 78 and Pipe, we are in the forefront lines of installing conservation strategies and devices. We appreciate your efforts of your committee and the author for the resolution, the opportunities to do more to achieve more water savings as we design and develop and upgrade properties throughout the city. We hope that and would ask for a working group to meet and encourage organizations to develop smart, common sense strategies to improve all that we have done to date.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Mr. Lane.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Adam Lane. I'm here on behalf of the Los Angeles Business Council to express our support for this motion. LABC commends the substantial efforts toward increased water conservation in LA made by our City Council and this committee in particular, our mayor, and various city departments through initiatives such as Water One LA. While Los Angeles has committed to addressing our water crisis through important public investments in green infrastructure and water recycling efforts, our members believe there's a lot more to be done if we have the right incentives and programs in place that can increase the use of effective water conservation technologies by the private sector in our built environment. Several technologies are currently underutilized or non-existent in the city of Los Angeles. Among these are the use of gray water, rainwater catchment, which is very rare, stormwater drainage catchment systems, and sub-metering on water systems, to name a few. LABC therefore would like to see various other strategies and methods that are being employed in other communities to ensure a more stable future for the people of Los Angeles and surrounding regions. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. We've got a sort of standing group of people that meet on this issue. It started in the first quarter of this year with a motion that I introduced, and they are reporting quarterly, so we'll acknowledge this as their most recent report and ask that they continue to come in and work together as stated in this motion, but guided by the process that we've already started so that they come in quarterly and work with us. So that being the order, we will take items 5 and 6 together in that they are very related and I think are pretty quick. Mr. Prieto.
Yes, sir. Both relate to system revenue bonds, one for the water system, the other for the power. We have staff from the Department of Water and Power, including the CAO.
Very good. I don't have any questions, colleagues, unless you all have some questions. These are items number 5 and 6 that the Department of Water and Power is requesting additional authority to issue, in the case of item number 5, $271 million in additional water system revenue bonds, and in the case of item number 6, $676 million in power system revenue bonds to continue the financing of the critical infrastructure. Mr. Blumenfield.
Just a couple quick questions. These bonds, how are they going to affect the ratepayer?
These bonds are covered by our existing rates, so issuing these bonds will not require a rate increase.
Great.
Mr. LaBonge?
No, I just want to thank you. Bonds are important. I know what it's done 101 years ago, and we continue it, watch it. The ratepayer advocates reviewed this. He's okay with it? Good. Super.
And I guess one other thing.
Yeah, please.
Obviously, the list of projects is a lot longer than the bonded amount, right? Are we going to be making up the difference or just prioritizing off the list?
Yeah. The way it works every year is we have a capital budget, and the bonds fund a portion of the capital budget. Current rate collections fund the other portion. If we were to try to do all of this capital work through current rate collections, it would require a very large rate increase. So we don't want to do that. The other reason we don't do that is we're building assets that last a long time. So it's appropriate to have ratepayers pay for those assets over an extended period of time, as we can do with bonds.
Ratepayer advocate, do you have any comment on the bond issuance, understanding that it's asking for the issuance under the existing authority and the rate structure? Do you have an opinion on either 5 or 6?
The department has reviewed these financing plans with us. They're part of a string of financings planned out over time. We are comfortable with this issuance.
Very good. Hearing and seeing no objection, we will order the approval of item number 5 and item number 6 as I previously had laid out at the opening. Very good. Colleagues, any additional questions, comments, concerns? Hearing and seeing none, there are no general public speaker requests. We are adjourned.
Adios.
Not until I hear that gavel come down.